Përshëndetje të gjithëve, mirë se ardhët në episodin e 6 të Albanian Role Models in Tech. Ky do jetë episodi i fundit për 2020-ën. Jemi shumë të lumtur dhe të nderuar që e ftuara e kësaj radhe është Erisa Karafili. Erisa është pedagoge në Universitetin e Southampton në Angli, ku kryesisht punon mbi cyber security. Pa humbur shumë kohë, jap fjalën asaj si fillim të bëj një përshkrim të karrierës dhe si thua gjithë e turistë të saj në computer science dhe më pas të filloj me prezantimin teknik që ka përgatitur.
Okej, përshëndetje të gjithëve. Më lini të bëj share screen. Mund të shikoni apo jo?
Po.
Okej, tani është në full size.
Po.
Okej, në rregull. Atëherë unë jam Erisa Karafili. Jam lecturer që është asistent profesor në Universiteti Southampton në Angli. Punoj në cyber security. Gjithë ecuria ime ka qenë në cyber security, kryesisht nëse duhet jap një titull vetes është eksperte e sistemeve formal për të zgjidhur problemet në security. Sot prezantimi i sotshëm do ju prezantoj dy zgjidhje solutions për të ndihmuar analistët për të bërë analizën e cyber attacks. Po më lini të them dy fjalë për veten time. Kam filluar të punoj si pedagoge këtu nga shkurti këtij viti. Më përpara isha një Marie Curie Individual Fellow tek Imperial College London te Departamenti Computing. Si Marie Curie Individual Fellow pata mundësinë të punoj si kërkuese indipendente për projektin tim që quhet FA Cyber. Një pjesë të punimeve që do ju tregoj sot kanë të bëjnë me punën që bëra si Marie Curie Fellow. Më përpara kam qenë Research Associate tek Imperial College, kam punuar si postdoc tek Technical University of Denmark në Danimark, afër Copenhagen, dhe gjithë studimet e mia universitare kanë qenë nga Universiteti i Veronës, Università degli Studi di Verona në Itali. Aty kam kryer studimet e mia bachelor në informatik, master për sëri informatik dhe si përfundim doktoraturën, gjithmonë në informatik, e fokusuar në studimin e sistemeve formal jo klasik për të siguruar veçori të sigurisë dhe privacy-t në sistem multi-agent. Gjatë gjithë kësaj periudhe jam gati 10 vite që merrem me kërkime, kam punuar në disa projekte. Marie Curie është njëri prej tyre, dhe jam Marie Curie Individual Fellow. Sapo përfundova fazën e parë të Cyber ESAP, që është një program kombëtar këtu në Britaninë e Madhe, dhe gjatë këtij programi kam punuar për të sjell punimet e mia, kërkimin që kam bërë si Marie Curie Individual Fellow, ta sjell në treg, po punoj drejt kësaj dhe për ta sjell në treg si një produkt komercial, produkt tregtar konkurrues në treg. Kam punuar edhe në projekte të tjera, siç janë DIAS ITA, që është një projekt, një aleancë industriale midis Anglisë, më mirë Britanisë së Madhe dhe Amerikës. Kam punuar në projekte europian si Coco Cloud, tani jam pjesë e CyberKit for SME, projekte nacional këtu britanik, siç është Cipartech, që bën pjesë e IPSRC-s, dhe Idea for CPS, që ishte një projekt danes. Gjithë kjo punë më ka ndihmuar të krijoj shumë relacione, të kem bashkëpunues. Pjesa më e madhe bashkëpunuesve ose bashkëpunuesit më të fundit janë nga Loughborough University, Universiteti i Lisbonës, King's College London, Universiteti i Çipros, Politecnico di Torino, por edhe universitete këtu themi overseas, universitetet amerikane më mirë, që janë Penn State, Purdue, UC Santa Barbara. Kjo është gjithë panorama e punës time. Por le të filloj me pjesën më interesante, do thosha, se sa çfarë kam bërë më përpara. So, as I told you, Today's presentation is going to be about how to help forensic analysts to investigate cyber attacks. Well, let me tell you, we are currently living in an interconnected world. We are surrounded by these small, smart devices that we are using those devices. We are using them every day. Sometimes we are using them even without us noticing that you are using those devices. We use those devices to keep ourselves fit, to keep ourselves healthy, to communicate, to transfer, to connect, to travel. We use them to avoid traffic. We use those devices in industry. We use those devices in the health sector. Think just the fact that during the ongoing global pandemic of the coronavirus, we were still able to be open for business. A good part of the companies were still open for business thanks to those technologies. And think how some countries or cities were able to use this technology to trace the virus spread or to keep it under control by using tracing apps. And there were some cases that were very successful with that. Now, with the rise of the interconnectivity, we have seen also a rise of some negative phenomena. These phenomena that could go from cyberbullying, fake news, vote manipulation. We have also seen in this period an unprecedented privacy violation, where our data has been collected, the data has been used, reused, shared, or even sold without us knowing this. So what can we do? Well, it's not just a matter of cyber. This is also a legal problem. And we saw that, for example, the European Union has taken some very good steps, at least some first steps to deal with it, for example, by applying the GDPR. But this is just the beginning. Now, with increase of connectivity, we have also a rise of the security challenges. And we had always had security challenges, even without us even thinking about the interconnectivity. Since the rise of the internet, we had security challenges. We had hacking, we had intruders. And what we have is that given the increase of this interconnectivity, we expect that the devastating effect of these attacks to increase because our life is more and more dependent on those devices. And if they're hacked, then the damage is big. An important effect is the economical one, because we expect by 2021 to spend around $6 trillion in cybercrime damages. That's a lot of money. But let's leave the economical part aside. What would happen if you knew that the dolls or the toys of your kids can be hacked? What would happen if you knew that an attacker can use them to spy on your kids? Would you feel safe to drive a car, an autonomous driving car maybe? Would you be safe to drive in that car if you knew that this car can be hacked? We are seeing an escalation of attacks. These attacks go from the public transport to the airplanes, the attacks on small smart devices, and we have also seen attacks on devices that are vital. These are the health devices that people have in their bodies, and they are vital for them. So would you agree to have one of those devices in your own body if you knew that somebody can hack it? During this coronavirus pandemic, we saw an increase of 600% of the phishing emails. And we saw a rise of ransomware, and we saw a rise of state attacks. It means that hackers are evolving, and they are always taking advantage of the situation. So what can we do? Well, we can use the tools that we have, so we can prevent the attacks. So some of the tools that we have, some of the current solutions, they are, for example, focusing on securing the system, focusing on securing the network, focusing on securing the data when it is not possible to secure the network or the system. And we also have solution for analyzing the system on understanding the risks and the threats of the system on being attacked. But again, they're not enough. The increase of connectivity is increasing the security challenges, and we need more efficient countermeasures. So what can we do in this case? Is that we could start to be smart, and we could start to analyze the attacks. By analyzing the attacks, we'd be able, from one side, to understand the modus operandi of the attacker, the vulnerability that were exploited, the resources, and the tools that they were used. By understanding what happened, we were able to put enact efficient attacker-oriented countermeasures. If we know the modus operandi of the attacker, then we know the next steps and we can stop it. If we know the resources and the tools, then we know how, or we could try to stop the attacker to have access to these tools or resources. Think about the NHS attacks. What happened is that we just needed to buy a domain, and it stopped, at least for that moment. And if we know the vulnerability, then we could patch the vulnerability. Now, during the analysis of the attacks, we could also get more information that would permit us to attribute the attack. What is attribution? Attribution is the process of assigning an entity, or person, or group, or state as a culprit to a particular attack. It might be a culprit or the perpetrator of the attack. Now, why we are interested in knowing who is the attack? Well, on one side, we can put enact efficient countermeasures that are going to be attacker-oriented, because now we know who is performing the attack. On the other side, we could bring the culprit into justice. This means that we can bring this person, entity in court, or when it is not possible, we could put economical or political sanctions to that country. But attributing and analyzing cyber attacks is not an easy task. It's not an easy task, given also the anti-forensic techniques and the deception techniques used by the attacker. So the attacker usually is always trying to hide their traces, or is using deception techniques, let's say, to fool the analyst. Digital forensic techniques help the analysis and the attribution process, because these techniques help to identify the evidence, collect them, filter, store, and at the end also analyze them. But also those techniques suffer from the quantity and the quality problem. The quantity problem is the fact that those techniques need to deal with an enormous amount of evidence, and the quality deals with the low format of those evidence. So what can we do? To help the analyst, I have provided two solutions. The first solution is a rewriting procedure that permits to filter the enormous amount of evidence. So in practice, this solution gets the evidence, it filters them, and it makes the filtering by using the relations of trust of the analyst. And at the end, it provides to the analyst a smaller set of evidence, which might have also new evidence that they were derived, but we know that the analyst is going to trust all the evidence. The second solution is a reasoner. This reasoner gets the evidence, it analyzes the evidence, and at the end, it provides to the analyst new information, possible paths of investigation, missing evidence, and if it's possible, it's also able to provide a list of possible culprits of the attack. For now, these are two different solutions that are trying to help the analyst in two different ways. So let me start with the first solution. Let me first see if I am on time. Yeah. So the first solution is this rewriting system. In practice, the solution is a formal one. As I said before, I'm an expert in formal methods, so you're going to hear a bit of formal methods today. So the first solution is composed of an evidence logic and its rewriting procedure. Now, the evidence logic permits us to represent the evidence of the attack, and the rewriting procedure permits to get this evidence that are already presented into the evidence logic, and it filters those evidence. It filters the evidence by using the relations of trust that the analyst, that is let's say the user that is using the system, has with respect to the sources that are providing the evidence and the reasoning that those sources are using. Now, the evidence logic, it filters, and together with the rewriting procedure, is able to filter the evidence and to capture and avoid the temporal and the factual discordancies. A temporal discordancy is when two different agents, or sources in this case, are stating that a particular event it has occurred in two different instances of time. In the evidence logic that we have constructed, we have decided that the event is unique. It can just occur one time. So in this case, if you want a practical case, so I'm a bit out from the cyber scenario, think a very known case for this temporal discordancy might be, for example, when there was the declaration of the liberation of Albania from the German occupation. There are some sources that say that this occurred on the 28th of November 1944. And there are some other sources that said that the liberation of Albania from the German occupation after the Second World War was in 1944. So we have two different dates of the same event that is the liberation. Now, one source might be, for example, the government before 1993, the one that states that it occurred in the 28th of November. And the second one that was, for example, the government of 1993, that was the democratic government, let's say it this way, state that actually it occurred on the 29th of November. Now it's up to the analyst to decide which of one is true. What the analyst could say was say, well, actually, because the government of the 1993, it was not a dictatorship, I'll trust them. So I'm just going to remove what the government before 1993 was saying about the liberation. I'm just going to trust this source. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to remove the fact that somebody said that the liberation occurred on 28th of November 1944. Okay, so this is how we are actually solving. For disclaimer, I don't have any opinion if it was 28 or 29. A factual discordance is when we have two sources that are stating that a particular instant of time, an event has occurred. Alice is saying that the event occurred, and the other source, for example, Bob, is saying that that event did not occur. So you have, in this case, this is a factual. Somebody is stating that a fact occurred, and the other saying that the fact didn't occur. How we solve this? Again, we say, who do we trust, Alice or Bob? We say, okay, we trust Alice, so we're going to remove what Bob was saying. So let me give you a panoramic of the evidence logic. The evidence logic is divided into three layers. It used, if you're familiar, linear temporal logic. It means that we have time here and the time is ongoing. So what we do is that we start by having the evidence on the evidence layer, and then we translate them through the rewriting system, first in the interpretation layer, then in the reasoning layer, then again we go back to the second one, that is the blue one. Now, when we start in the evidence layer, what we do is that we try to find all the temporal and factual discordancy and then remove them by using the relations of trust that we have with respect to the source. Then we are into the interpretation layer. So when we are into the interpretation layer, let's say, is the interpretation that the analysts have with respect to the evidence that are given. In this case, it means that all the information that we have here is, let's say, the knowledge that the analyst has. So actually, he doesn't care who said what, because from the moment that he says, okay, I believe this, then he can replicate it. Then we have here on the reasoning layer, we put all the evidence that the analyst was able to derive. Now, also on the evidence that somebody can derive, because he's using different knowledge and different information, we might have conflict. So what we do in this case is that, again, we use the relations of trust of the analyst. And if the analyst trusts more one reasoning than the other, what we do is that we simply remove the one that we trust less, and we continue with the derivation. At the end, when we are done with all the derivation and by removing all the conflict, we provide to the analyst a set of evidence. So let me provide you an explanation by using an example. This is the example of the data breach of the Democratic National Committee. And we know about this data breach because in November 2016, WikiLeaks published private emails from the DNC. We have three sources in this case. The first one, that is CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike is a security company that was hired by DNC for dealing with the attack. So what CrowdStrike stated is that the attack occurred in March-April 2016, and the attack was a successful spear phishing campaign using Bitly accounts to the short a malicious URL. In practice, they did a malicious phishing campaign. They were sending these emails to members of the DNC. and somebody clicked on the email, put all the information, and on the other side, an attacker had the information and downloaded all the emails, and then at the end, in November 2016, everything was in WikiLeaks. But we also have another source. The other source is the forensicator. The forensicator is a forensic analyst, an anonymous one that has a blog that he was commenting on this data breach. What the forensicator stated was that actually the attack, and remember, for us, the attack is a unique event, occurred on the 5th of July, 2016, so not in March, April 2016. And what the forensicator was stating was that it occurred on the 5th of July. So how he was able to came up with this date? Came up with this date because he analyzed the release metadata, and the metadata were created on the 5th of July. Furthermore, he said that the attack was physical. It wasn't a phishing attack because the speed of the creation of the metadata was of 23 megabytes per second, which means that the transfer speed was of 23 megabytes per second. What does it mean is that the person that got the data, it copied the data and created them with a speed of 23 megabytes per second. He was saying that it's not possible to have a non-physical transfer speed of 23 megabytes per second. So he was stating that it's not possible somebody is accessing the account online, getting the information, and the speed is 23 megabytes per second. It must have been somebody in the room that was able to access the machine, put a USB there, download all the data, and then leave. We have a third source, that is FireEye. FireEye is a security company, as you well know, and what FireEye is saying that, well, actually it is possible to have a non-physical transfer speed of 23 megabytes per second. Now, how we represent them through the evidence logic? Let's start with what FireEye was saying. FireEye is making a simple statement in this case, what we call a simple evidence. So we have that FireEye is stating that the instance of time T2, it happens, there is an event of non-physical speed transfer of 23 megabytes per second. So it is possible that by simply accessing with a high speed or to have a non-physical speed transfer of 23 megabytes per second. And this is what we call a simple evidence. Source is stating that an event occurred at an instant of time. And the event is a simple one. Let's call it even event or fact, as you like. Then another evidence is what CrowdStrike was taking. So what CrowdStrike is saying is that the attack occurred on the instant of time T1, and CrowdStrike is making the statement based on this other information that we call reasoning. In this case, reasoning R1. The reasoning is using other two evidence. In this case, both of the evidence are simple, but they might be simple or derived. So in this case, we have that the attack occurred on the instance of time T1, based on the reasoning that is using that was a spear phishing campaign on T1, and this spear phishing campaign was a successful one. So this is what we called a derived evidence. So if you go back to what the forensicator was stating, we can write it in this way. So the forensicator stated that the attack occurred on the instance of time T2, that is 5th of July, so not T1, and T1 and T2 are different, based on the fact that the metadata were created. So this is a predicate that I use for saying metadata was created at the instant of time T2, and in T2 there was a physical access. And this is reasoning R2. And the forensicator was able to say that there was a physical access in T2 based on reasoning R3. And the reasoning R3 said that it is not true. So this sign here is not true, that there is a non-physical speed transfer of 23 megabytes per second. Because for him it was physical, not non-physical. And as I said before, we use the relations of trust. So in this case, we have that the analyst trusts more FireEye than the forensicator for the non-physical data transfer speed. So what we have here is this translation where FireEye is more trusted than the forensicator for this particular event. So when we say we trust more Alice than Bob, it's not that it's not universal. I trust Alice more than Bob, for example, for cybersecurity. But because I know that Bob is a doctor, when we are dealing with drugs or coronavirus, for example, in this case, then I trust more Bob than Alice because I know that Bob is an expert on that. So it's for a particular event or classes of events. So this is what we call a relational formula. Now, this is the evidence representation by using the first layer of the evidence logic. And as I said, we have also different layers. Now, briefly, in the evidence interpretation, because now it's interpretation of the analyst, what we do is that we simply remove what the source was saying, because once the analyst trusts and it has it in its knowledge, then he doesn't care who said what, because he trusted them. So it's inside the knowledge that he has. So this is the evidence interpretation, simply saying that an event occurred at a particular instance of time. And then when we are dealing with derived evidence, this is a bit more complicated, but not such, because what we state is that if CrowdStrike was saying that the attack occurred at instance of time T1 based on this information, what we have is that if we have this information, so if these are preconditions, if they are true, then we are able to derive that the attack occurred. This helps us in case, not just in this case, in the first layer, we have that CrowdStrike is stating that. But what might happen is that CrowdStrike can state that, but also Alice and Bob is stating the same. And if for any reason we have removed what CrowdStrike is saying, and we still have, for example, that Alice is saying that, then the analyst is still able to make the derivation. And inside the evidence reasoning layer, we have all the derived evidence. So at the end, if we start from this evidence, this is the evidence reasoning. So this is what we could be able to derive. It's the conclusion at the end. And we go through the conclusion by first passing through the interpretation layer. So this passage from one layer to the other, and at the end when we arrive to the conclusions, are done by using the rewriting system. That is a set of rules that are applied, and it permits at the end to have a consistent set of evidence. And it for sure it permits to eliminate all the temporal and factual conflicts. So this is a look of the algorithm. I'm going to skip some passages, but the main idea is that we start with the evidence layer. We're still with the D and C example. So these are all the information. What CrowdStrike was saying, differentiator, FireEye, and relation of trust. So what we do is that we first transform all the derived evidence into interpretation layer and also some other evidence. So if we start, this is what we call a tableau rule. So this is the input, on the top is the input, on the bottom is the output. So if we start with the derived evidence that the attack, that what CrowdStrike was saying is that we get this and we transform it into a second layer formula. But also because CrowdStrike is making this statement, so he is able to derive this information, but by using some other simple evidence, we also include in our knowledge base what CrowdStrike was stating about them. So we do the same for all the derived evidence, and now we have populated not just the interpretation layer, but also the evidence layer. Why we do so? We do so we are able to extract all the simple evidence. And this is done because then we want to check which evidence, simple evidence we trust and which not. So when we go from the first layer to the second one, we go and we search now for all the conflict, the temporal or the discordance one. In this case, we have this conflict that is that what FireEye was saying for the non-physical speed transfer and what the forensicator was saying for the non-physical speed transfer. So we're able to capture it. And what we do in this case is that we simply remove what the forensicator is saying because we trust less the forensicator with respect to what FireEye is saying. So result is simply that here we don't have any more what the forensicator was saying. Now we do the transformation of simple evidence into interpretation layer formula. So this is the input, and down we have the output. So we simply remove the source. And now we have done this, what we can do, we are done with the evidence layer. And we are going from second to the third layer. So the interpretation layer now, what we are trying to do is that we are trying to derive new information. How we do it? We go and we check all this implication, all these errors here. So we check the first one. Well, we are actually able to apply this because for this reasoning, we need spur phishing and successful, and we have them. If we want to apply rule 2, reasoning 2, we need metadata creation and physical access. Now we check here. We have the metadata creation. Physical access, we can have it. So it's in reasoning 3. But for have it, we need non-physical speed transfer. And we don't have it because it was what the forensicator was stating before, and we removed it because far right, we're saying non-physical speed transfer, while the forensicator was said non-physical speed transfer, and we trust more far right than the forensicator, and we remove what the forensicator is saying. So actually, by removing it, we are able to not derive two of the derivation that the forensicator was stating. So at the end, we are able to derive that the attack occurred at the distance of time t1, and this is it in the reasoning layer. In the reasoning layer, we put all the derivations, and there we check if we have conflicts or not. If we had conflicts, then we are going to use the relations of trust that the analysts have with respect to the reasonings. We don't have in this case because we have just one reasoning. And what we do finally is that we insert it inside the interpretation layer. So we simply remove the reasoning because we don't care now for the reasoning because we don't have any conflict. So this is the result. The result is we started from this very complicated evidence where we have derived evidence, we were able to derive them, to have the sources, and so on. And at the end, we say that the attack occurred in the instance of time t1, that is March, April 2016, and we also have some other evidence, like it is possible to have a non-physical speed transfer of 23 megabytes per second. There was a spear phishing and successful phishing campaign in the instance of time t1, and there was metadata creation. We are not saying that this is not true. It's there. We don't know what to do with this information, but it's there. So this is all the filtering process that we were able to do in this case. Now, I showed you all the reasoning and all the logic behind it. All of this is automatic. We have not one, but actually two tools that does that automatically. You give the evidence, you provide, then this provides the solution. You can provide the resource, the relations of trust in the beginning, but also the tool is able to ask to the analyst, I don't have this relation of trust. Who do you trust? Let me know. So, or if you don't give any relation of trust, or you just provide some of them, then the tool is going to provide you all the different scenarios that you might have. So this is about the first solution. Let me go briefly to the second one. Let me check how much time do I have. Yeah. So the second solution is about attributed cyber attacks. Going back to the first one, these two are two separate solutions for solving two different problems for the forensic analyst. So in this solution, I provide a reasoner that is able to help the analyst for analyzing and attributing cyber attacks. The solution, the reasoner, it is called ABR. This stands for argumentation-based reasoner. And this reasoner is able, given the evidence, to analyze them. It is able to work with incomplete and conflicting pieces of evidence. Now, it is normal for the analyst to work with incomplete evidence due to the anti-forensic techniques and the deception techniques used by the attacker that is trying to hide his traces. So we are able to work with incomplete evidence because ABR has abduction in it. What is abduction? What it does? What abduction does is that when some pieces of evidence are missing, it is assuming those evidence, and it still permits you to arrive at a reasoning, and at the end it's going to tell you, well, we were able to conclude this, but this is what we assumed. And the other thing is that ABR is also able to work with conflicting evidence. Now, given the use of deception techniques by the attacker, it's probable that the analyst needs to deal with evidence or derived evidence that brings you to conflicting conclusions or conflicting evidence. So how to deal with them? Well, argumentation is the most natural way to deal with conflicts because it permits you to deal with these rules that provide conflicting conclusions. But at the end, what do? Is that you decide, well, I'm going to use this rule for this particular context and this other rule for another context. So to give an example about argumentation, I don't know if you're familiar or not with monotonic or non-monotonic logic. Now, monotonic logic is the one that said, if you are able to derive A and then you derive non-A, then you have a conflict. You cannot do anything in this case, something went wrong. In non-monotonic, if you have a rule that derives A and a rule that derives non-A, you don't have a conflict. It's normal. Argumentation, this is why I like so much argumentation, because it simply is the rules that you have in everyday life. You might have two different rules that derive to different conclusions, but actually one might be the exceptions of the other. So you might have different contexts when you apply one rule and when you apply the other one. Think about this simple example. You have the rule that said all the birds can fly. It's a simple. The eagle can fly. So birds fly. It's a simple rule. Think about having, yes, all the birds can fly, but I have a penguin. Penguins are birds. Penguins cannot fly. So what do? If you are in monotonic logic, then you are, well, the rule is wrong. I need to give all the example. Monotonic logic, actually, you don't need this. What you can do is that you can say, well, all the birds can fly. Still, I'm going to keep this rule, but I'm going to have an exception. If the bird is a penguin, then the bird cannot fly. But so what you do is that you have this, let's say, exception. You still keep the rule, the basic rule, all the birds can fly, but if the bird is a penguin, then the bird cannot fly. Okay, so this, you have two conflicting rules, but you are still able to keep both of them. You just decide when you apply one and you apply the other one. So you have a preference between them. Now, and this is actually how we usually do arguments, how you argument in everyday life. Usually when you argument in everyday life, you might have a conclusion. So when you have a conclusion, what you do is that if you want to attack what you just said, either you attack, for example, the preconditions that you used or the reasoning rules that you used. So argumentation helps you also with this. Now, going back to ABR. ABR is also able to work with technical and social evidence. How ABR is able to work to make reasoning with social evidence? Where it is able to do these reasonings because it incorporates inside it the Q model. The Q model is a social model that represents how the analysts perform the attribution process of cyber attacks. So in practice, what you do is that you divide the rules and the evidence into 3 layers. The rules are the reasoning rules that you use to reason with the evidence and derive new ones. So you have 3 layers. The first layer is a technical one. So in this layer, you mainly deal with evidence that are technical for the attack. So command and control servers, IPs, similarities between malware. You check if the malware or the code was constructed for having a particular target. So you check all this information. And this information and the reasoning rules that deal with them are in the technical layer. Then you have the operational layer. Now, the operational layer is somehow in between the technical aspect of the attack and the social aspect of the attack. Why? Because in the operational layer, we mainly deal with, for example, who might have the motivations of performing the attack, who might be the entity, the country, or the person. Then you check, for example, the damages of the attack, who might have the capabilities for performing it, or if maybe there was somebody that had done any claims for the attack, or if of who was the contact, which was the context of the attack. Was the context of the attack political? Was it industrial? And then finally, the strategic layer deals mainly with, for example, who might be a possible culprit of the attack. Now, the use of the social model permits us to deal with both of those evidence. So this is a panoramic of ABR. ABR has as the main user the analyst. The analyst provides the various evidence, rules, preferences. They are analyzed with the reasoning core of ABR that are these reasoning rules. And at the end, the conclusion that is provided can be answers to the queries, and the queries can be provide me the possible culprit, provide me who might have motivations, who has done in the past similar attacks, so this kind of information. And you can also ask to ABR, provide me all the possible culprits. So what ABR does is that provides you the top 10 list of the possible culprits together with the score. The score defines the confidence level that ABR has on the provided conclusion. Together with the conclusion, ABR also provides a graphical representation. The graphical representation presents the reasoning rules that they were used, the evidence that they were used, and the evidence that were assumed. Furthermore, ABR also provides the missing evidence. So what were the evidence that you might go and check for them? And also new investigation paths. So you can ask to ABR, provide me some new investigation paths. You can ask, is X the possible culprit? And ABR can say yes or no and provides also the reasoning. But you can also say, I don't know who's the culprit, give me some hints. And ABR can provide you these hints. Now, the reasoning core is divided in these 3 layers by following the core model. So you have the technical layer, operational, and strategic. You start with the technical layer, to the reasoning, go to the operational, to the reasoning again, and the strategic layer. All of this evidence layers are using the background knowledge. The background knowledge is information that we have provided to ABI and can be updated for sure. The background knowledge is mainly divided between the common knowledge, that is general information like countries, name of countries, language, relations between countries, and more technical information. For example, similarity between malware, pieces of code, group of hackers, relations of hackers with respect to countries or government, or past attributions. Let me provide you an example to how ABR works. Also, ABR is fully automatic, and you can provide the evidence and it provides you simply the conclusion. So let me provide you an example of the reasoning. So the example is the US bank hack that occurred in 2012. If you are not familiar, a lot of US banks were facing a denial of service attack. So these are the predicate that we have, so that there was an attack that had as target the US banks. The attack had a particular target country, that was US, and has a specific target again that was against US banks. And the period was in September 2012. We also have some more information. This information are, for example, that the web hosting service were infected by a malware called It's Okay, No Problem Run. So we add this information here. Then we have that It's Okay, No Problem Bro hijacked the corporate clouds of those banks. So we add this information here. And then we also have some social information that says that early that year, in February, US placed economical sanctions against Iran. And we have US imposed sanctions against Iran, February 2012. Now, these are the evidence that we have, okay? We can apply ABR. So we start by applying the rules, we start with the technical rules, as I said. Now, the first rule that can be applied in this case, how it works is that you have a list of rules that are applied. So the first one that is applied is that we have, if an attack is able to hijack the corporate clouds, and we said that this attack has high-level skill attacks. We also have other ways to derive high-level skills attack, but this is one of the rules. So in this case, we know that US bank hack was able to hijack the corporate clouds. Therefore, we can derive that US bank hack is a high-level skill attack, and we insert it in our knowledge. The second rule that is applied is that if an attack has high-level skills, then it means that this attack requires high resources. So in this case, we have this is the precondition, and this is the conclusion. So left side precondition, right side conclusion. Sorry, so right side precondition, left side conclusion. Sorry about that. So in this case, by applying the technical rule 2, we have a new evidence. This is that US bank hack requires high resources. Then the next rule that is applied is one that says that if a particular country T has imposed sanction against C on a particular date, then this country C here might have political motives for performing this, has political motive for performing attacks against this country T. So we are able to add this information. So Iran might have political motives for attacking the US. And if you go and check the background knowledge, we have that Iran has cyber superpower. We have a certain list of countries that have cyber superpower that are in tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 countries about cybersecurity. In this case, we have a technical rule that said that if a country is cyber superpower, then this country has resources. So in this case, we can apply it, and we can derive that Iran has resources. Please remember that we apply all the rules for all the countries. So in this case, Iran is one of them. We have all the countries there. US itself, Italy, all. In this case, for the cyber superpower, we have all the cyber superpowers, but we also use it for tier 1 countries. So there is what we have in this case is that Iran might have the resources for performing the attack. Then we apply the second operational rule. Second operational rule says that if an attack requires high resources and a particular entity has the resources, then this entity has the capabilities, because at the end, either you need the resources or you need the economical resources for having somebody else doing that for you. So X might have the capabilities for performing the attack. So in this case, we have that Iran might have the capabilities for performing the US bank hack. Again, we do this for all the countries might have the resources for performing that attack. And the last operational rule that we applied is one that deals with has motivation. How it works is that if C here has the motives for attacking T, and there was an attack that has this target T, and this attack had a particular target that was T again, and the attack period that was attacking T was applicable, in this case it was close by to when C has the motivations, then we might say that C has motivation. So going back, we have the US bank hack that has a target US, and it has a particular target that was US, and we had that Iran has political motives in that period. And the period is, the political motives was in February, the attack was in September. And because in this case, we have decided that these two dates are applicable because they are just 7 months apart, so it makes sense. You have the political motives, you have the time for preparing this attack that was a high-level skill attack, then you were able to perform the attack. So actually, Iran might have the motives for performing this attack. Again, might have the motives. So we add this information, and at the end, we apply the strategic rule. In this case, the strategic rule says that if an entity has the motive for performing the attack, and it also has the capabilities, because this is something very important for us, then he might be the possible culprit of the attack. So in this case, we might conclude that Iran might be a possible culprit of the attack. If another entity has all of this information, at the end, we can give also that entity as a possible culprit. So this is just an example of how ABR can work. I'm not stating that Iran was a possible culprit or not in this case. So ABR works automatically. It is able to process all the various information. This is just one of the way on how you can provide that a particular entity is a possible culprit. So to conclude, I provide you with two solutions for helping the forensic analyst during the analysis and attribution of attacks. The first one worked on the filtering of the evidence, and I provided the evidence logic and the rewriting system. The second solution is an automatic reasoner that is based on abduction and argumentation, and it analyzes the evidence, and at the end it provides conclusions together with an explanation for who might be a possible culprit of the attack. There are a lot of future works. The first future work that I might think about them, it will be to put them together. If we think about the filtering process, an interesting future work, it will be to work with the trust, because we are using so much the trust that the analysts have with respect to the sources, the sources that are agents that can lie, they can try to get your trust, to use maybe trust reinforcement system, or maybe to have a reputation and belief revision process. And for sure to work with probabilities in both cases. I'm not using probabilities. Having probabilities would really help to put some numbers on what might have happened or the chances of a particular evidence on being true. For the part of attribution, it would be nice to also have the automatic collection and extraction of evidence. So to have ABR put it there in front of intrusion detection system, and trying to make sense of the data and provide to the analyst some conclusions. This is also part of what we are trying to do for the commercialization part of ABR. And if I want to think about the research side of ABR, for sure it would be to enrich the reasoning rules and the background knowledge, and maybe to have this enrichment made automatically by using NLP techniques, and again to work with probabilities. So if you have any question, please let me know. I'm looking out for talented PhD students. So if you are interested about a PhD in cybersecurity, let me know. Otherwise, I'm open to questions. If you're shy, this is my email, and you can just take a picture, and you have my website and also the website of FA Cyber, that is the project, the Marie Curie project where I worked on, that you can find more information about the work that I just presented. So thank you.
Faleminderit Erisa për prezantimin shumë interesant. Tani, normalisht, nëse keni pyetje, mund të bëni unmute mikrofonin dhe të pyesni direkt, ose edhe mund të shkruani tek chati. Mund të filloj unë me një pyetje, në fakt.
Po, patjetër.
Që nuk ka të bëjë me pjesën e prezantimit, por përmendi që ke qenë edhe Marie Curie Individual Fellow. A mund të ndash pak me ne se çfarë konsiston kjo fellowship dhe se si mund të aplikohet ose kush mund të aplikojë për ta filluar.
Po, patjetër. Atëherë, Mari, ky fellow është për 2 vite. Deadline është tani në shtator, që kështu nëse keni ndërmend ta bëni, ju këshilloj të gjithëve që ta bëni, të aplikoni të paktën, sepse vetëm procesi ja vlen. Nuk e di mirë kur është, po mos nëse keni një ide të mirë në mendje, shkruani. Unë e fillova timen rreth fundit të gushtit, domethënë kam shkruar për 2-3 javë, nuk e di se si ja dola, po ja dola. Domethënë, nëse ti ke mendjen për ta bërë, bëj. Për të gjithë. Bëni dhe çfarë konsiston? Atëherë, kjo që bëra unë ishte që ke nevojë për të patur mobility. Domethënë, në vendin ku je, nuk duhet të kesh qenë në momentin që ti bën aplikimin më shumë se 12 muaj. Unë kur e bëra atë sapo kisha lëvizur në Angli dhe arrita të futesha. Domethënë kjo është pjesë rregulli i parë. Duhet të kesh një PhD normalisht. Nuk ka limit sa kohë më përpara ke bërë PhD. Në fakt te kemi nivele, po nuk ka ndonjë limit. Dhe do shkruash një aplikim, idenë që ke ti. Dhe ke nevojë edhe për vendin ku do vesh, që profesori që do bëj si supervizor, që është më shumë si mentor për ty, do shkruaj, do thotë që okay, është në rregull për ty që të vesh, dhe ke nevojë për dokumentat ekonomike, për kostet çfarë janë nga ai universitet, domethënë nëse doni ta bëni tani, duhet të keni që tani kontaktet me profesorin, nëse do ta bëni vitin tjetër, filloni që tani të merrni kontakte me profesorët, të zhvilloni idenë çfarë doni të bëni. Marie Curie është e hapur për çdo gjë, nuk është vetëm për informatik. Di që ju pëlqejnë shumë idetë që kanë një risk të lartë dhe një nivel inovacioni të lartë. Dhe është shumë kompetitive, shumë konkurse për ta marrë Marie Curie. Është një nga, nuk është IRC është tjetër, por ja vlen, ke 2 vite, je paguar, paga shumë e mirë, në krahasim me nëse një postdoc për shembull në Angli, të ndihmon nga që ke mobility dhe është një bursë europiane, të ndihmon nëse ti ke një familje, ke fëmijë, ke një ekstra bonus nëse ti lëviz nga një vend te tjetri, do të jetë 500-700 pound varet nga vendi, ke fondet për të lëvizur, për të vajtur nëpër konferenca, për të krijuar networkin tënd. Ti praktikisht je independente. Ke projektin, je independente, në fund të fundit ti do shkruash gjithë reportin, gjithë deliverables, dhe profesori nuk duhet jetë si supervizor, nuk duhet jetë shefi jot, duhet jetë mentori. Të të jap këshilla se si ti mund të ecësh më tepër, sepse kjo është gjithë ideja që ti pas kësaj do të jesh 100% independente.
Domethënë si tip trampolini që ti të kalosh nga postdoc në një researcher independent.
Po. Është trampolini më i mirë, do thosha.
Faleminderit.
Lutem.
Hello. Hey Erisa, thank you very much for the talk. It was really nice. I have the following question. So what we know as today's internet, basically the infrastructure of today's internet, even though it is growing more and more, at the very beginning it was not designed with the security and privacy in mind. So it was a bunch of researchers, like Brilliant knows Erisa, so Brilliant wants to send the file to Erisa, and that's it. So there was no need for any security or privacy mechanism in that setting. Yeah. And since the current infrastructure has grown so much, we sort of have moved forward by applying patches to the existing infrastructure, right? So do you think that this kind of setting provides sort of a nice and I would say like ripe environment for the attackers to thrive, and sort of aids this cats and mouse race or game, however you want to call it, between the adversaries and the defense parties?
Yeah. So but what can we do? Do we change the internet? We might do, but it's going to take a long process, I guess. And yes, I think this game had always existed. It's not just the internet. Think about all the codes, or during the war, we had this Enigma machine, and at the end, we were able to break it. So every time there is a secret, or every time we're trying to do something, we're always going to have malicious actors. So even if we change the internet, even if we might maybe try to change the internet on the best, I'm pretty sure we are always going to find another solution for breaking it. This is human nature. I don't know if I answer you. That is a topic.
Oh, yeah, yes, yes. Yeah, we are on the same mindset. I mean, and yeah, it's kind of hard to change the internet, at least at this point. Like, you either have to throw everything away, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. At least not for now. We don't know yet. But this is the thing. I think even if we change it, we are always going to find ways to break it.
Yep. Totally agree.
It's a challenge. If somebody tells you cannot do it, this is what you're going to do.
True. Yeah, that makes it even more interesting. I have like sort of a follow-up question.
Yeah.
So my line of research is on cybersecurity and deep learning.
Mm-hmm.
So I see 4 forms of leakages from the models, and sort of investigate the robustness to attacks. And I was wondering whether you have sort of investigated or incorporated any forms of machine learning into your research so far. And if yes, could you elaborate a bit on it? Or do you envision that at some point in the future?
No, so I haven't used any machine learning yet. I haven't used any data mining yet. So I'm using AI, but AI that is more close to what I do. So formal methods and knowledge presentation. So argumentation reasoning is a form of AI. Before we had machine learning. Yes, I see machine learning and data mining to be used. For now, I'm working on making the system robust. And then, I see the use of machine learning, especially, for example, for doing the malware analysis. That is something that is very interesting for AVR, because you need to do some malware analysis. And for that, you need machine learning to understand which malwares are similar to who. So yeah, that's something that I'm envisioning working on.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the questions.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting, and especially when it comes to cybercrime. Okay, I have like a question, a general one, if you have like information. A few years ago, one of the most asked questions was, can we trust digital forensic evidence? So, and this question, as I know and what I have read on papers, it was done mainly when it came to trust or not the cybercrime evidence found through these techniques, especially to be acceptable on the court. And the law framework was a bit difficult, and the main concern was, how do we show that our tools and methods are correct when we are trying to recover the data from a source that we haven't seen before? So this was like the main issue. But things, as the years are passing, things are becoming more complicated with the cloud computing, for example. So if you are aware of any tools, models of digital forcing, that it is used for identifying cybercrimes in cloud computing, especially, if you have any information.
Yeah, so that is true. Some couple of years ago, it was very difficult to bring this in court, but there has been a lot of work with respect to this, and where digital forensic analysts together with law enforcement are doing a lot of work on bringing this. And you see more and more people that are brought into court because of cybercrime, or people that have been extradited. I don't know, like a country has asked another country, I want that person to prosecute for cybercrime, and this had actually happened. So some of the tools, so this is now, yes, we know it's difficult to use digital forensic techniques, and you need to use a particular let's say it's called triaging on how you do the data, that needs to be according to the legal rules. And this is something that you can bring in court if you have followed all the procedure. There is a big literature on this aspect. Some of the tools that I have seen are some of the tools of DFIR, are, if I'm not wrong. Some other tools are Encase, others are Magnode. If you want, if you send me an email, I can send you a list of them. But there are tools that help you with that. I know that there is a program. So follow some, if you have Twitter, follow DFIR, whatever you say with DFIR. Then you have some people working on also on the legal aspect. For example, one is Eogan Kessi. Otherwise, just send me an email and I can send you all the information, because there are actually tools that people are using in court for this.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. And also I have like a second question. So Brilliant, with his second question, he said a bit of it, but I don't know if there is like any, for example, someone that is like a cyber security researcher and is researching for a hot topic when it comes, for example, to integrating or using like business intelligence, or I don't know, blockchains, or any new big, for example, big data database systems. So all these new technologies that will help in a way for SIG analysts to do better his job. So is there any hot topics? So for example, using like, let's say, blockchains, for example, blockchains to help the analyst.
Okay, blockchains to help the analyst, I don't know.
Okay.
I know about blockchains that can be used, for example, for smart contracts, or you can use blockchains, for example, for data sharing. For forensic analysts, I'm not sure. Some hot topics on digital forensic, attribution is one of them, but as we know, attribution is difficult. What people are trying to do is that they are trying, for example, to have a unified model of how you represent the evidence. Yes, you have some use of AI for the digital forensic. But what I'm mainly working on is the, let's say, when something between, because you have the digital forensic that is just digital forensic, that is also doing, for example, memory analysis and so on, disk analysis. And you also have the digital forensic that deals with malware analysis and the network analysis. So my work is, and this digital analysis of the malwares is in between also the cybersecurity and malware analysis. So the intersection of this is where I'm working. So you might actually check on digital forensic for cyber attacks. This might be a new topic. And I think it's a new topic. Not a lot of work has been done in the intersection of them. So me coming from the computer science background and cybersecurity background, trying to talk with digital forensic analysts wasn't so easy, because they weren't used to having people from computer science. They know that what they do is important, but because they do mainly what the work that they are doing, it's mainly, for example, for bringing in court, they see the computer scientists, yeah, you are trying to do something cool, but you need to respect the rules, as you said, for bringing that in court. So maybe the intersection of the two is something that that is, I think, a hot topic.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So I have another question regarding this ABR system. So can you please share some insight on how you evaluate the system, and how is the quality of the background knowledge affects the accuracy?
Yeah, so for now, the evaluation has been done on some case studies. So I need to say it was very difficult to find attributed examples, because you don't usually find cyber attacks that are attributed, and it is difficult even to find the reports. So what we did is that we took a couple of examples, and from there we constructed the reasoning rules. Then we took some other examples, where we created some new examples, and we tried to understand what was going on. Are the rules working? Are they giving us insights? And actually, the rules are working. And the thing is that, for example, for some scenarios and some cyber attacks, ABR was able to provide the result. For example, it was country X, but it was able even to provide some other insight. It was country Y, and I would never thought about that country that that might be a possible culprit, but actually it was applying all the rules. It's just that in that moment, nobody was thinking about that country. They were all focusing on country X, like for example, North Korea. Nobody was thinking that, well, actually also Iran wasn't in good relation with US in that case. So yes, it is working, and actually it's also providing some very interesting insights.
Yeah, but something that I'm really curious on, what does your ground truth consist of? So like I am not a cybersecurity expert. So like the way that I see it is that imagine that you have a bunch of news articles and then you can extract some kind of information from these news articles. Yeah. And then you want to somehow derive some conclusions out of this information that you gathered. So what would be the gold standard that can be used for evaluating the system?
So the system, the way that we evaluated it is by providing some cases where we know that the attribution has been made, and see what ABR is providing us. And if ABR is providing similar results, then we say, well, we were able to arrive to those results. Now, the thing is that ABR, it depends a lot, as you said, on the background knowledge that we are providing. Because if you provide to ABR background knowledge that is false, also the result is going to be false, because we assume that what we are providing to ABR, this is what ABR knows, so it's going to use all the information. If something is different, is not true, then we cannot provide it. Then the other thing is the information that we are providing to ABR and the information that ABR is using for now is limited. And also the reasoning process is limited. So if I started to provide some new information that ABR do not have any reasoning rules where to process this, then ABR is going to try to use all the rules that it has, but the reasoning is going to be limited because it's not able to process that kind of information. This is why one of the future works is for sure to have to enrich the reasoning process. But it's very difficult to have. This is usually what computer scientists ask me, how you validated it, or people asking, so which data set did you use to validate your ABR? And there are no data set for attribution. And how can you say it was this? So either you create realistic examples or toy examples, which we did, or you do as we did, that we start reading all the reports that we could find on the US government. We try to get all the information and the reports and blogs and to create scenarios from there. Otherwise, for now, there is no data set, or there are some data set of the companies that are doing attribution for their clients, but we are never going to have access to them, or if we have access to them, we cannot publish.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I know how it works. Yeah. Okay. No, that's Unfortunately, this is how research works. However, we have to find some way on evaluating our kind of papers and experiments.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? So I have a final question. You mentioned that you were open for PhD students.
Yeah.
So like, could you just share your kind of opinion on like what does a student need to do a PhD? Also, why should a student do a PhD, first of all?
Okay, so why you should, well, that would be up to the student, right? So I did my PhD because I liked what I was doing. So when I was doing my master, I started working on multi-agent systems, and I was liking it. And since my undergrad, I knew that I wanted to do research, to work more. So that's a bit up to the student. So the motivation is not going to come from me. It's going to come from the PhDs. The other thing why they need to do, well, they could start by doing a master, and if they like what they're doing, for example, here in Southampton we have a very good master in cybersecurity. It's just 1 year, that is different from other Europeans. Usually in the UK, the master is just 1 year. So somebody can start by just doing the master. And if he likes it, then he can follow up. He might find something that he's very passionate about. And then he can say, well, I want to know more about this subject. And this is how I can learn more. And for sure, you don't need to do a PhD. If you are not up to writing papers and you just want to do practical things, then yeah, don't do a PhD. I'm not the best motivator for PhD students.
Okay. No, actually it makes sense. So like students should first see if they like research during their masters, and if they feel that they are able to produce good results,
Yeah.
they should kind of try to do a PhD, because it's hard, it's not easy, but in the end, if you like doing research, it's really it's worth it. So
Yeah.
actually we have a last question.
Yes. Chat. Anna, hi, thank you for your speech. Okay, I'm reading. Everyone has a unique path when it comes to career, but based on your experience, is it difficult to be a woman and a researcher in cybersecurity field? Ooh, it's a hot topic. Okay, yes, especially if you are. So when I started my, I hope this thing is changing. When I started my undergrad, it was 10 girls over, I think, 500 guys, and we all stick together. I don't know why. Then the master, actually, we were less and we were more women. And then the PhD, we were almost not 50-50, but almost 50-50. Then things after the PhD, things start to being more difficult because yeah, you have the career, then you have maybe industry that is attracting you, and maybe it's easier because then you also want to have a family. So yeah, it's difficult. It's a lot of sacrifices. If you saw my presentation, I've moved a lot. So when I was 18, I moved to Italy, and then I didn't stop moving. I hope I'll stop moving now. But yeah, it is difficult also on like the private perspective, but work-wise is worth it because you can provide new insights that they haven't thought about. Industry and academia are trying to push a lot for having more girls in STEM. I do a lot of programs when I have gone to schools to talk to girls to inspire them, or I have done a lot of activities to try to create, like, say, roles for young girls, especially girls that are coming from disadvantages area, for example, in London and so on, because I think industry needs us and academia needs us. That's something for sure. I have noticed myself as a woman professor, I've always have at least a 50-50 rate between male and female students. And in computer science, again, the rating is very low. But the fact that these female students decide to have me, I think it shows a signal. And this shows a signal to my bosses and people that are dealing with academia. So there is a need for women in industry and academia in cybersecurity. Yes, it is difficult. Yes, a lot of the times you're going to feel like you are the only woman in the room. But you don't need to be a man to be accepted. You just need to be yourself. And that's it. You don't need to act like them, behave like them, think like them. No, actually, the industry and academia wants you to be a woman. I hope I inspired you to continue.
Yeah, no, actually, this is the best way to close this presentation, but also the whole Albanian Role Models in Tech series. Again, we thank you a lot, Erisa. This is the reason that we are doing this kind of presentation. We want not only to promote role models or women that are leaders in their fields, but also women that are really working with community programs. So women that go there in schools or in poor neighborhoods and help girls and motivate them to start learning and delving into computer science. So I thank you again, and I wish you all the success in your academic career. And thank you all for participating in all of our presentations. Soon the presentation will be will be streamed on YouTube. So thank you again. Just want to make a last kind of notice. There will be a presentation in November where a bunch of Albanian girls who have won the Google scholarship are going to explain to you how to apply, what kind of documents you need to prepare, and then you can ask all of the questions that you might have for applying in this amazing opportunity that Google gives every year for girls and women in computer science. So thank you again, and have a great summer, and enjoy your vacations, and good luck for your careers.
Thank you for inviting me. It was fun.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.